Hello and welcome back to the lesson. Today we are going to study the codes of governance as issued by the Institute of Certified Secretaries and different industry regulators. So on the one hand, we have the Institute of Certified Secretaries, and on the other hand, we have different industry regulators. So we are going to study the codes of governance as issued, number one, by Institute of Certified Secretaries. So one is Institute of. Then after that, we'll analyze codes of governance as issued by different industry regulators. So candidates in Kenya, codes of governance are crucial frameworks that guide organizations in adopting best practices for leadership, accountability, transparency, and ethical conduct. And these codes are issued by professional bodies and various industry regulators, reflecting a concerted effort to foster a robust governance across different sectors. So one such body that issues these codes of ethics or codes of governance is the Institute of Certified Secretaries. Now, the Institute of Certified Secretaries is the premier professional body in Kenya responsible for regulating and also promoting the corporate secretarial and governance profession. And while the ICS, the Institute of Certified Secretaries itself, it does not issue a single universally binding codes of governance for all entities. While it does not issue governance for all entities universally, it plays an important role in developing and advocating for governance standards. So one of the roles is to develop and advocate for governance standards. Developing and advocating for standards. The Institute develops and advocates for governance standards. ICS actively participates in the formulation and review of national governance codes. For example, it was instrumental in the development of the Mwongozo Code, which is the code of governance for state corporations. Another role that the Institute has played or plays is issuing best practice guidelines. Issuing best practice guidelines. The Institute frequently issues guidelines or guidance. The Institute also issues training manuals and advisory notes on various aspects of corporate governance, board effectiveness, compliance, which serve as the factor codes for its members and the broader corporate community. Issuing best practice guidelines. The third role is in relation to codes of governance for private organizations. Codes of governance for private organizations. Codes for private organizations. Codes of governance for private organizations. The Institute has spearheaded the development of specific codes of governance for private organizations in Kenya, although its adoption is voluntary. This code aims to bring good governance practices to the larger segment of private companies not covered by the mandatory codes for listed entities or state corporations. Because we know for the listed entities, those that are listed at the Securities Exchange and state corporations, we have codes that these institutions ought to adhere to as a law. Okay? But for private organizations, the complying with this course of governance is voluntary, and we've seen the Institute of Certified Secretaries playing a pivotal role in the development of codes of governance for private organizations, though such codes are not mandatory. Another role is in relation to accreditation, governance auditors. Accreditation of governance auditors. The Institute of Certified Secretaries accredits qualified governance auditors who conduct the mandatory governance audits for listed companies, state corporations, and other entities. Accreditation of governance auditors. They are also champions. The Institute of Certified Secretaries is the champions of governance awards. Champions of governance, COG. Champions of Governance Award. The ICS, the Institute of Certified Secretaries, organizes the COG Awards, the Champions of Governance Awards, which recognize organizations demonstrating excellence in corporate governance, further promoting adherence to established governance principles. That means that essentially, the Institute serves as a thought leader and advocate for good governance, influencing the development and implementation of various codes across different sectors. Do you understand? Yes. Now, moving on to the fifth point is we've analyzed 5. I think these are sufficient enough. These are codes of governance as issued by Institute. We've analyzed 5 areas or roles that are displayed by the Institute of Certified Secretaries. One is developing and advocating for governance standards. Number 2 is issuing best practice guidelines. Number 3, the course of governance for private organizations. 4 is accreditation of governance auditors. And 5, champions of governance awards. So let's move to the different industry regulators. Industry regulators. This is 1. Then we have 2 industry regulators. Industry regulators. Number 1, we've discussed the Institute of Certified Secretaries. Number 2 is industry regulators. Different industries have their own regulators. There are several industry specific regulators and government agencies that have issued their own codes or guidelines to ensure that entities under their purview adhere to specific sector-specific governance and compliance standards. One such regulator is a Capital Markets Authority. Number 1, Capital Markets Authority of Kenya. The Capital Markets Authority of Kenya has issued the Code of Corporate Governance practices for issuers of securities to the public, what we call the CMA Code. The Capital Markets Authority has issued the CMA Code, which applies to all companies whose securities are listed on the Nairobi Securities Exchange and other entities licensed by the Capital Markets Authority, like the stockbrokers, the investment banks, fund managers, and so on. You understand? And the key focus areas include board operations and control, the rights of shareholders, stakeholder relations, ethics and social responsibility, accountability, risk management, internal control, transparency, and disclosure. And the requirements are the annual government audits, okay, The code regulates or mandates the CMA code mandates an annual governance audit by an ICS accredited professional and an independent legal and compliance audit. So there is the annual governance audit that is mandatory and the annual compliance audit that is also mandatory. And these audits have to be conducted by an accredited governance auditor. Okay, so we have independent legal and compliance audit by a legal professional at least once every 2 years. And listed companies must also disclose their level of compliance with this code in their annual reports, often as an apply or explain basis. You understand? Yes. So that's the first industry regulator, Capital Markets Authority. You understand? Then we have State Corporations Advisory Committee. State Corporations Advisory Committee. Number 2, State Corporations Advisory Committee. State Corporations Advisory Committee. All right, the SCAC and the Public Service Commission code. So the code here is the Mongozo code. So we have the Mongozo code. This is the CMA code. We have the CMA code that is issued by the Capital Markets Authority. Then we have the Mongozo code for state corporations. All right. So the code of governance for state corporations applies to all state corporations in Kenya. And the key focus area is ethical leadership, board effectiveness, stakeholder relationships, performance management, transparency, accountability, and also risk management within the public sector entities. And the code emphasizes annual board evaluations, performance contracting, and also commitment to transparency and accountability in the use of public resources. The code also mandates a comprehensive and independent legal audit at least once every 2 years to establish adherence to applicable laws and regulations. So that's the second regulator. Okay, the State Corporations Advisory Committee enforces the Mongozo Code. Now, moving to the third one, we have the Central Bank of Kenya, CBK. The Central Bank of Kenya, it issues also a code and guidelines, what we call the Prudential Guidelines. The Central Bank of Kenya issues the Prudential Guidelines for institutions licensed under the Banking Act. And it's applicable to commercial banks, mortgage finance companies, and other financial institutions regulated by the Central Bank of Kenya. And the key focus areas include the board composition, independence, the roles and responsibilities of directors. We have risk management framework, internal control systems, audit committees, ethical conduct, and so on. We have audit committees and things like ethical conduct, anti-money laundering, name them. Those are the key areas that the Prudential Guidelines focus on as issued by the Central Bank of Kenya. And the requirement here is, or the emphasis is on strong internal governance, regular internal and external audits, and also strict compliance with prudential ratios and anti-money laundering regulations. These guidelines are legally binding, and non-compliance can lead to severe penalties. So these are the prudential guidelines as issued by the Central Bank of Kenya. So the Central Bank of Kenya is the second industry regulator. It regulates the financial institutions, okay, the commercial banks, mortgage finance companies, and other financial institutions. The fourth one is the Insurance Regulatory Authority. Also issues codes and guidelines. These are corporate governance guidelines for insurance and reinsurance companies. They apply to all insurance and reinsurance companies operating in Kenya, and the key focus areas include board structure and composition, responsibilities of the board and committees like the audit and the risk committees. There is also the management functions, internal controls, risk management, capital adequacy. There are areas like fair treatment of policyholders and ethical standards. And the requirements here is regular reporting to the IRA on governance compliance. That means that insurance companies and reinsurance companies are required to regularly report to the Insurance Regulatory Authority regularly on governance compliance, mandatory external audits, adherence to specific prudential regulations for the insurance sector. So Insurance Regulatory Authority is the third or the fourth industry regulator. Now, the fifth industry regulator is the SACCO Societies Regulatory Authority. SACCO Societies Regulatory Authority. SACCO Societies Regulatory Authority, SASRA. SASRA is the fifth industry regulator, which also issues codes and guidelines for all regulated SACCOs, both the deposit taking and the specified non-deposit taking SACCOs. So we have SASRA regulations. Okay, this one we have SASRA. SASRA regulations. The SASRA issues SASRA regulations. SASRA or SACCO societies for non-deposit taking businesses, regulations, and also associated guidelines. And I've said it's applicable to all SACCOs, both the deposit taking SACCOs and the specified non-deposit taking SACCOs. And these guidelines focus on governance structures, board and committee roles, financial management, risk management, internal controls, capital adequacy, liquidity, and member protection. And SACCOs are required, candidates under these regulations, SACCOs are required to conduct annual external audits by SASRA approved auditors. They are also required to submit various financial and governance returns, and also adherence to fit and proper requirements for directors. And so these are the key industry regulators candidates in Kenya. And that's the end of our today's lesson on the codes of governance as issued by the Institute of Certified Secretaries and different industry regulators. We've learned in this lesson that the Institute of Certified Secretaries plays a pivotal role. The Institute is the premier professional body in Kenya that is responsible for regulating and promoting the corporate secretarial and governance profession. And while the Institute does not issue universal codes of conduct, the Institute plays a key role in developing and also advocating for governance standards. The institute has also issued best practices for best practice guidelines for organizations. There is also the Code of Governance for private organizations. The institute also accredits governance auditors, and also it is the institute that is behind the Champions of Governance Awards. We've further analyzed industry regulators, different industry regulators, starting with the Capital Markets Authority, which issues the CMA code. This is the code for the companies that are listed at the Securities Exchange, Nairobi Securities Exchange. Then there is the Mwongozo code for state corporations, and one such industry regulator is the State Corporations Advisory Committee. Then the third regulator is the Central Bank of Kenya that issues the prudential guidelines. The Insurance Regulatory Authority of Kenya also issues codes or guidelines for insurance companies and reinsurance companies. Then we have SASRA, the Circle Societies Regulatory Authority, which issues SASRA regulations. So the codes and guidelines candidates are issued by professional bodies, and the sector-specific regulators collectively form Kenya's comprehensive framework for corporate governance. Comprehensively, all of them, they form the corporate governance framework, and they ensure that organizations, regardless of their legal form or industry, operate with integrity, accountability, and compliance with the prevailing laws and also the prevailing best practices. So that's all for today's lesson. Bye-bye.